Hi, welcome to the channel. So today I'm reacting to the B-17 that flew without a cockpit, coming from the channel FlakAlley, which I will link down below. If you get a chance, please go check him out. He has a lot of great content. Let's get to it.
It was the 14th of July, 1944, a thunderous evening. Cruising at 25,000 feet, 24-year-old First Lieutenant Ewald Swanson of the 483rd Bomb Group was pilot of a B-17G Flying Fortress, nicknamed mispah.
So quick trivia, that bomb group actually fell under the 15th Air Force, which was a part of the U.S. Army Air Corps.
Its tail number 4232109. Their mission was to strike at the very heart of the Nazi stronghold in Budapest, Hungary. The formation consisted of 60 flying fortresses, and as they entered Hungary, they were bombarded by relentless curtains of thick flak. Explosions erupted all around mispah, shredding the tail section and punching holes into the battle-worn wings. Nonetheless, the B-17 formation presses through the initial flak bombardment and heads inbound towards their main target, the Ferencváros railroad yards. This was one of the most heavily defended and strategically vital targets of the late war, critical for the movement of troops, equipment and oil, keeping the German war machine alive.
In all honesty, I had no idea that we even flew any missions into Hungary, so interesting.
Now, just seconds away from the target, Bombardier 2nd Lieutenant Kenneth Dudley lines up the Sperry bomb site and successfully releases their bombs. All of a sudden, chaos erupts. A Flak 88 round lands square on the nose of mispah. The nose explodes, vaporizing the bombardier and the navigator, whilst covering the front of the fortress in blood. The nose peels off above the aircraft, and shrapnel from the cockpit ricochets throughout the cabin, piercing wing gunner Sergeant Wesley Tucker in the chest. The inside temperature plummets to a freezing minus 30 degrees. Due to the extreme damage, the center of gravity shifts to the tail, causing the fortress to pitch up into a vertical. They were mere seconds away from stalling out and entering a death spiral. Astonishingly, First Lieutenant Ewald Swanson, despite no longer having a cockpit, regains control of the battered B-17 and re-enters the formation. The crew of a nearby B-17, nicknamed Yvonne, couldn't believe what they were seeing. A blood-soaked B-17 without a nose pulls up alongside them in one of the most haunting sights of the war.
I can't even imagine the sheer terror of being in that plane for those few moments. I cannot even imagine it.
mispah was strangely flying as if nothing had happened. What was happening inside the B-17 was even more impressive. Since there was no cockpit or control column left to maneuver the aircraft, under the screaming command of pilot Swanson, the crew had begun to fly the aircraft by pulling the exposed control cables by hand. Despite having lost a significant part of the aircraft, this flying fortress and its injured crew refused to go down, a symbol of unwavering courage and indomitable machine spirit. However, over 200 Flak 88 guns still had their sights set on the formation. Suddenly, another explosion rattles the B-17. A flak barrage destroys their number 2 engine as the fortress begins to lose power and airspeed. With the nose blown off and an engine gone, mispah and her crew, through sheer determination and will, kept the aircraft airborne. However, the effects of drag from all the damage received was increasing by the second.
So it slowed down.
mispah had fallen far behind the formation by now. For a perilous 10 minutes, the crew battled the control cables to get as far away from the hornet's nest as possible.
The fact that the B-17 crew was actually able to figure out how to control the aircraft with all those exposed wires and cords is very impressive. So I'm guessing that these crews probably had a working knowledge of how the B-17 operated and were trained on how to handle some mechanical emergencies in flight. But I doubt that they ever came across a scenario like this in training. So props to them.
Now, over Dunaveks, Hungary, pilot Ewald Swanson informs his crew to immediately bail out whilst he held it steady. 7 crew members successfully bailed out of the aircraft. Swanson could no longer tame the crippled fortress on his own. Immediately, the B-17 pitches up, trapping Swanson inside the fuselage. He grabs the parachute and keeps it close to him, waiting for the B-17 to stall out. As the fortress comes to a standstill, Swanson takes the opportunity to jump out of the front, but just as he does, his chute catches the torn metal of the cockpit, ripping through the fabric with brutal force. This was a blessing in disguise, however, as if the fabric hadn't torn, he would have gone down with the ship, pinned by centrifugal forces. Swanson is violently flung back, narrowly missing the tail section of the B-17. The young pilot momentarily passes out, whilst falling out the sky from 20,000 feet.
Lack of oxygen. Hypoxia.
When he opened his eyes, he was seconds away from hitting the ground. First Lieutenant Ewald Swanson immediately opens his parachute, but notices that it had sustained significant damage.
So did pilots back then actually have to go to jump school, or were they just given training on how to land in a parachute in case they ever had to bail out?
The chute was not slowing him down enough for a safe landing. The landing was going to be brutal, one that he was unlikely to walk away from or even survive. By sheer luck, on the way down, he spots what he believed to be an enemy POW camp in the middle of a dense forest. Swanson positions himself on top of the trees by the camp, hoping it would break his fall. Several seconds later, he crashes into the dense treetop. First Lieutenant Swanson suffers a broken left leg alongside deep tissue cuts from the tree branches. Against all odds, he survives the landing. The German medics of the POW camp quickly spot Swanson's body in the brush and recover him. They administer life-saving first aid to the young pilot, who has at this point stared death in the face and kept going. In fact, to his amazement, he finds out that the entire crew of his B-17 had survived.
You see how skinny they are? My neighbor's father was actually a World War II vet, and he was about 6'3", 190 pounds when he was captured and put into a German POW camp in Germany, I think. By the time he was liberated a year or two later, he was a skeleton of a man. He was somewhere between 90 and 110 pounds. So he had a very rough time. But with that being said, the Germans did treat the American POWs much better than the Japanese did. It was a nightmare for anyone that was a Japanese POW.
His crew were captured nearby, only to meet up at the same camp their pilot had somehow ended up at. A happy accident, as they put it. The crew would endure 9 long months through the harsh cold winter at the POW camp. On the 30th of April 1945, US troops would liberate the crew of Mispah. The war for these young men had finally come to an end. The 8 survivors would return home to the USA that night. Ewald Swanson's bravery that day would earn him the prestigious rank of Lieutenant Colonel before his retirement from the United States Air Force.
I think that is a picture of the Memphis Belle. They actually made a movie in 1947 called The Memphis Belle, which is what I think this footage might be from. I never saw that movie, but I did see the 1990 remake with Matthew Modine, and I loved it. I don't know how historically accurate it is, but if you want to get a sense of what it was like to be in a B-17 flying over Germany or over Europe in combat conditions, then watch that movie. It is scary.
After the war, he returned to a quieter life, marrying his beloved, Catherine Swanson, and raising a son together at Michigan, USA. Yet, it was the bond with his B-17 crewmates that remained closest to his heart. In the decades that followed, they would often reunite, old warriors with weathered hands and bright eyes, sharing stories of impossible missions and the unbreakable brotherhood they forged when they were barely more than kids. Swanson would pass away peacefully on the 28th of February 2009 at the age of 89, remembered not only as a war hero, but as the only known pilot to have ever flown an aircraft without a cockpit. Only Mispah and the men who dared to ride her into hell and back could ever truly understand what that meant.
It's sad that they never found the crew remains. Considering how amazing the story is, I think that the fat electrician needs to do a video on it. You know he would do the story justice. Please go ahead and smash that like button. If you do want to hear another incredible story about a B-17 in World War II, then here you go. Thanks for watching.